Okay, guys, this is a Squier Mini Stratocaster, and I want to walk through what this guitar is and some upgrades I've done and upgrades I'm not doing, which may be more interesting and useful because there's a lot of videos on YouTube like the one Squier upgrade you have to do to make your guitar playable, and I think a lot of that is actually kind of noise. So, zoomed in here, you can see this upgrade. Saddles, new saddles. That is probably the most important thing you can do to make this guitar sound better. It is kind of expensive relative to the cost of the guitar because the guitar is like 130 or 50 bucks. And those saddles are like 50 or 60 bucks, so it's kind of a lot relative to the price of the guitar. But that one modification will make your guitar sound good, sound much better than it does out of the box. I want to say something about that again in a second. If you don't want to spend that kind of money, the simplest thing you can do is just change your strings. These are 11 gauge strings I've put on this guitar, and it makes a huge difference, especially with the short scale of the neck and the tension, to have a heavier gauge string. I actually play 11s on all of my guitars, but it's really not even a choice with a guitar like this. It comes with like 9s or something incredibly noodly. Get rid of those, put 11s on the guitar. Just that by itself will make the guitar sound much better than it does out of the box. But after that, you want to go with the saddles. And the reason is this. I see guys are like, the thing you got to do with the Squier is immediately upgrade the pickups. Well, or maybe even the tuners, which I'll get to. The problem with that is, if your guitar doesn't sound good, this is true of all guitars, if it doesn't sound good, like by itself, unplugged, like an acoustic guitar, just playing it in your lap, unplugged, then there's no point in amplifying that. You could have a $2,000 Marshall, you could have, the greatest pickups in the world, but if your guitar sounds like crap, then all you're going to be doing is amplifying crap. Don't do that. Improve the sound of your guitar acoustically, then worry about electronics. So, an immediate upgrade to improve the tone of the guitar is the strings and the saddle. Now, let's talk about what this guitar is, okay? This is a super cheap, cheaply made guitar in China, made in China. Comes in a cardboard box that is sealed and taped shut. If you go to a guitar store that sells one of these, chances are you are being handed a cardboard box that is sealed and contains this guitar. It means nobody has ever taken this guitar out and tuned it up or set it up or inspected it or made any adjustments. So this guitar that was made cheaply in China was placed on in a shipping container, transported across the ocean in a non-climate controlled environment, humidity and temperature all over the place, lands in the United States at some port, sits again in some shipping container, probably for weeks or months with the backlog of, supply chain. Then it's placed on an 18-wheeler and driven across the United States somewhere to where you live in your town, and goes to the guitar store, and then when it gets there, who knows what happens. Maybe it just sits in a box again in some unrefrigerated or unair conditioned or unheated room. Nobody looks at it, then you buy it. Okay, so you've bought this guitar, and what do you think it's going to sound like straight out of the box? It's probably going to need a lot of help. So this particular guitar, and we'll get a new shot here if we can. This particular guitar had the worst fret sprout that I had ever dealt with on a guitar. And for those of you who don't know what fret sprout is, it's basically like the frets here. Like this used to be jagged on both sides. And it was an absolute problem because it would cut your hands up. And in fact, the high E string would kind of do that thing where it like peels off the neck and gets stuck. So that was fixed with a little cheap file from, you know, you can see the painter's tape on the file. This was from Lowe's, right? So that's the other thing. You could go to StewMac and spend like half the cost of this guitar on fancy fret files, but you know what? A little mill file from Lowe's and a little nail file from, you know, Walgreens or whatever to round off these frets made a big difference. So now the fret is smooth. That was the first thing that had to be done. Filing out those frets and smoothing them down. Changing the strings. Changing the saddles. Now, when you change the saddles, you have to set the guitar up. And remember, this guitar has never been set up, right? It's never been professionally looked at. So what I've got here is just a simple radius gauge. And I got a Music Nomad radius gauge. Okay, so get one of those. It's like a set, costs like $15 if you don't have one, because what this allows you to do is to properly set your guitar up in terms of your string height, which nobody's bothered to set your guitar up for you, right? And then, of course, get your intonation right by adjusting these screws. If you don't know how to do that, there's all sorts of videos out there. But just those things makes this guitar something that is sort of like it is completely unplayable out of the box, and it becomes a very satisfying instrument to play. And that's important because obviously otherwise it's just a waste of money, but also I bought this guitar for someone who is learning. This is their first guitar, right? And if it's not a satisfying experience, if the frets are cutting her hand, or the string is getting stuck, or the guitar just sounds bad, then it's not going to be a very inspiring tool. And what might have been, you know, the next Jeff Beck becomes someone who just puts the guitar down and never explores it. Maybe that's an exaggeration. But point being, it has to be inspiring, it has to sound good. And if it's well taken care of and well set up and a joy to play, then it will get played. And that's the whole point here. So anyway, these are my upgrades. We're going to go plug it in, see how it sounds. I want to talk briefly about the tuners and why I don't care about the tuners. Okay, these are cheap tuners. There's no question about that. They're not very good, but all I really did, again, back to the China thing and the shipping containers, I just used like a little tool here to tighten them up when I got the strings off. And these little bolts here, once it's tightened up, it's pretty stable. I mean, the key thing is there's no tremolo on this guitar. It's basically a hardtail, right? So you don't actually need locking tuners if you're not doing whammy stuff. So, I mean, I have locking tuners on my Fender Strat that has a tremolo. This doesn't have that. So I saw a video where a guy's like, the one mod you need, and it's a set of locking tuners that cost more than the damn guitar. Like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. I do want to make a little observation here, which other people have made. When I upgraded my Fender Strat to locking tuners, I obviously have the stock tuners here that come off of an American Strat, and these will not, this is from an American Strat, these will not fit on your Squier Strat without some serious modification. And the reason is these two little pins, I don't know, the focus is a little messed up here, but the two little pins are in the wrong spot. So, you know, you could put them on, but you're going to have to do some wood filling and drilling and stuff like that. That, you know, it's just more work, and I'm not so sure that it's necessary. I mean, I might actually do it. Don't get me wrong. I might do it, but I don't think you have to do it. And I certainly, if I was going to go spend any dollar on improving this guitar, proof is in the pudding. The first thing I would do is buy a new set of saddles, because that is going to drastically improve the tone of your guitar. And then, of course, when you do that, you do need, you know, to set it up. So the radius gauge is important. Um, let's go plug it in, see what it sounds like. I don't know what you thought of that, but I think it sounds like a Stratocaster to me, and it's kind of fun to play. The only thing I wanted to add on this is I did also upgrade the strap locks. The strap buttons that it comes with are so small that it's almost unusable. So just getting a set of strap locks is a good plan. And then a final little thought I have is it's easy to get obsessed with gear and brand names and stuff, but one of the greatest guitar players alive right now, this guy named Jack Pearson, lives here in Nashville. And there's a video that I'll link to where he shows up to one of these like gear guy interviews, where they ask you questions like what kind of guitar and amp and pedals do you use? And he shows up to this interview with like a $99 Squier Strat. And it turns out it was going to be a gift for some family friend or something, and the girl didn't take to it or whatever. So Jack Pearson, who's played with like the Allman Brothers and Jimmy Hall and all this stuff, he plays a $99 Squier Stratocaster, and he's a totally badass pro level guitar player. Just goes to show you that it's really not so much about the guitar and the brands and how much money you pay for something. It's really what kind of player are you and what can you do with your hands. So those are my closing thoughts on why I think the Squier Mini is a pretty cool time. And with just a little bit of money added into it, you can really make this thing into an enjoyable playing experience.